Chris, just obviously a fair bit surrounding Tyson Stengle this week. Can you just talk us through as best as you're able the state of affairs this week and how you've absorbed it all with Tyson?
Yeah, so he's available to play. Got the tick of approval from a health perspective very early on, which is important and important to be thorough there. And internally, we've had some conversations about it. We fully acknowledge as a club that we're going to have little hiccups here and there, but I don't know how other clubs or even the AFL industry think about these sort of things generally, but I know how we think about them. And we accept that there are going to be issues that pop up every now and again. And first and foremost, we think about the well-being of our players. And yes, we've got a role to help educate them, but we don't treat them like kids. And we certainly don't take a punitive approach, where we are seeking to punish every little misstep. So it wasn't ideal, but it wasn't a huge issue either in our minds. It was one of those things that's going to happen every now and again. And we feel in a really good place to perform well this weekend.
How is he going at the moment, Tyson?
Well, he seems very good to me. Yeah, trained really well this week, and as I said, it's hard for me to be completely across, how he's feeling from a health perspective, and that's why, as a coach, I need to have a lot of faith in our medical staff, and they're supremely confident that he's in good shape. And he's certainly trained well and moved well and seems well enough in himself, and excited to go out and play well, which is what we expect.
Chris, just when that situation lands on your desk, what's your initial reaction?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think the important thing to acknowledge at the outset is that every situation is different. So I could explain what my reaction has been to this incident, but I don't think it's necessarily an indication of how I might react in another situation, except to say that my instinct is always to, how is he? Is he okay? And how can we support our people? And again, maybe sometimes there's the risk that we and I can come off a little defensive of our people. I can live with that, because that is part of our role, to help them as much as we can and defend them when it's required. So I'm not sure whether it's the old days, I hope it is, but this idea of the public flaying is just not the way we do things, and not something we're interested in. I get it that others are interested in it, and I get that some are baying for blood in some respects in these sort of incidents. But that's just an indication again that we have different roles within the industry, and we respect theirs. And I guess we would hope that they respect ours, but if they don't, that's okay as well. Each to their own.
Is there a bit of a warning that comes with all this, that if he does slip up again, there will be consequences?
Well, I think that again would imply that we're, threatening a course of action, and so no, we're not. I don't believe that that's the culture that we're trying to build here. We don't treat them like school kids. If anything, we kind of work for those guys. We're here to try to create an environment where our players can thrive. It's not an authoritarian regime where the coaches warn that if you behave badly, you'll get turfed out. Now, underlying all that, I think we all understand the way the industry works. I mean, it's mandated within the rules that we move players on at the end of every year. I don't think they need to be reminded that this is a competition, and that if you don't perform, or there's a pattern of behaviour, that long term there will be consequences. But to isolate it to this situation with Tyson, I think would be unfair.
Patrick Hansford said earlier in the week that it was a bit of an error of judgment. Do you subscribe to that view?
Yeah, well, I think that's right, but I think it happens a lot with all of us. I think we'd all look back on certain sort of situations and think I'll come off this press conference and I'll think, I wish I had phrased that a little bit better. It was a bit of an error of judgment to frame it that way instead of this way. Now, those errors of judgment occur on a spectrum, but what's the alternative? You say, we would prefer everyone play it so safe. For example, in this situation, boys, you can never go out. because something bad might happen. You can never get in a car because car accidents happen. I don't think we want to live our lives that way, and we don't want to run an environment like that as well. So if you are going to accept that, we almost self-select for risk takers in an AFL environment, and it's not our job to make them straighty 180s. We want to make them better people for having been at the Geelong Footy Club, but we also at the same time need to accept that some of those errors of judgment will happen, and we can shape them to try to minimise the impact of it happening again.
Was he remorseful after this? Obviously, you spoke to him a fair bit during the week. Yeah, is he remorseful?
Yes, but I'm a little hesitant to sort of talk through what I consider to be private conversations. I mean, there will be a limit to the stuff that I would share with you, but not. I mean, I don't think he was over the top. Like, it's just one of those things. Like, something happened where there was a slight, error of judgment. Now, I would prefer, but let's be clear, I do kind of subscribe to the idea that players out late, it becomes a bit of a risky environment. I get a little bit concerned when it happens, but we're not going to put rules in place or curfews and have things fly in the face of what we're trying to build, where we give our players room to think. And again, I don't think many people, many adults in a big company would accept ridiculous rules being placed upon them. And I think the same should be the same for footballers. And unfortunately, our industry does suffer a little bit from the way things were done in the past, where 28-year-olds were treated like 14-year-olds. Well, we're not going back to those days.
Do you feel treating players like adults, as you've said, has been a cornerstone of what has been pretty much a flawless culture over the last sort of decade or so?
Oh, no, it has been flawless. And part of what I think we're trying to build is that we don't sit on our moral high horse. We're not saying we're perfect. The opposite. We're saying we are fallible. We'll make mistakes. Things like this, I guarantee it'll happen again. But we're going to do our best to minimise the impact. We'd prefer it didn't happen. And again, we're just not going to sort of cave in because you have an incident here or there to a sort of authoritarian style operation. Now, I completely get there are others that would prefer that it did look that way. They can run their clubs however they like. The AFL can, run their organisation the way they like. But we think we do have something that's working for us. It's not perfect. We're not saying it's better than anyone else's. We're just saying it's ours.
How do you feel, footy-wise, coming into this week? How do you feel you guys are placed?
It's hard. It's hard forecasting. But we played really poorly a couple of weeks ago. I'd probably take a bit of a broader view when it comes to, forecasting's a bad idea, as I said. But if you do cast a broader view of the competition, it just seems to me that, and I've said this a lot this year, I think, that you just can't get carried away when you're going well, and you can't overreact when you're going badly. I can't come up with a team this year who hasn't had a patch where you think they're a really good team and they're going to be hard to beat. And everyone, it wasn't so long ago that Sydney looked almost the perfect team according to some. And they're having their moments as well. That's just the competition we're living in at the moment. So our responsibility is just to assume that the team we're going to play is going to be in a patch where they're going really, really well. And because we played well last week, it doesn't mean much going into this week. And if you have a bad day, you've got to move on really quickly. So that's good for the game. It's hard to predict. It's really annoying for coaches and individual teams. But 4 games to go in the season, I think we've got enough evidence to say that our best is going to be good enough. The challenge is trying to get to that position within games as quickly as you can, because teams are trying pretty hard to stop you playing well.
How important is it hitting your straps in the last month of the season? We've seen other teams in the past. I think you guys have bucked that trend maybe in 2022, but besides that, it seems like the last month is imperative to how you go in the finals. I mean, how do you see it?
Yeah, look, I think it's important, but it's not compulsory, and it's definitely preferable. But the very best teams have got the next 4 weeks, and then they've got another 4 weeks of finals as well. So, look, you prefer to be if you had to choose, you prefer to be playing your best in those last 4 weeks of finals, but you've got to get there. It's just so tight. And I guess the positive for us is we do feel like, our list is in pretty good shape. We've got a few guys we'd like to get back. But for the most part, not only we've got availability, but we feel like we've got guys who are feeling as good and moving as well as they have for most of the year. So that plays a big part in kind of, there's the form element as well, but it's hard to strike good form if your players are sore and tired.
Chris, it's one player can change how you structure up. You're probably not in most cases, but you bring Reece back in as a genuine ruck. How does that change how you look at Jaconi, Neil, Blitzards?
Yeah, well, we think that it gives us more flexibility. I think that would be the thing to focus on the most. Reece has clearly played most of his footy in the ruck for us, but we think it's always been a strength that we've had some flexibility with our tall guys. We think De Koning's been really effective and he will play a fair bit up the ground throughout the rest of the year. And it was always a plan to bring Stanley back at some stage. And then Blitzards is, a flexible player who can basically play anywhere. So the conditions have impacted our thinking a little bit over the last couple of weeks as well. So look, it changes it. But it doesn't set it in stone. It's still flexible enough for us to move it around in game.
How's the ground looking? Saw some helicopters flying over it, I think, earlier this week.
No, it's good. It's good. I think it's... we play a similar role to you guys in that we're really observers. We haven't trained on it for a little while, but we don't look after the ground. And the trust and the curators, to my untrained eye, I mean, my home lawn looks pretty good, but it's still an untrained eye. It's come a long way in a couple of weeks, and I think they've done a good job.
Cam Guthrie listed as TBC on the injury list. Are you hopeful that he will get back before the end of the season?
Yeah, I am, and I was just informed before the presser that had changed to TBC. My take is I wouldn't read too much into that, other than it's just uncertain. I think I've tried to explain this. I'm not sure how successful I've been, but the ones that are a bit hard to pinpoint, we would prefer to be vague rather than specific and end up being inaccurate. And sometimes, you say your best guess is 3 weeks, and when that doesn't happen, it implies that you either weren't truthful or that something's happened to change it, where the truth is almost always, it was hard to predict and we just didn't quite get it right. So we anticipate him being back, it's just a bit hard to pinpoint.
How's he doing with it all?
Oh, he's been amazing. Like, he just throws himself at his rehab. He's here all the time, and he's working really hard on it. And I hope, I don't know for a fact, but I hope in a way what he's sort of seeing is a team that, if it hits the straps, can be good enough to do something special, and he's desperate to be a part of it.
How much forward planning are you doing from a player movement point of view? I saw a report that the Cats are interested in Jake Waterman. I'm sure there's a lot of players you're interested in. How cognizant of that are you as a senior coach, or how far away do you leave that to your heads of footy and your list management team when it gets to this point of the year? Yeah,
I think it's really specific to the individual situation. So that there are times where I'm very, very removed from it. And then there are other times where I need to be more involved. And I think that the comment that I would make is that as a club, we're really respectful of the changes the AFL have made, particularly with regard to free agency. But effectively, free agency's opened up the trading world a bit more, and you have pre-agents as well. And they were, along with the Players Association, very forthright in their views that they wanted more player movement. And so the natural extension of that is that you will have players wanting to do their research more and more and earlier and earlier. And I guess the clubs have to play their part in that. But that looks different for different people. Some guys are happy to just let it run and I can do what I need to do in September or October. Other guys want to know 18 months out what's going on. So it does shift a little bit. Some guys will want to know a little bit more about the coach. Others couldn't care less. I don't know how many are like that, but it's certainly on a spectrum. Does that answer your question?
Sort of.
Feel free to follow up.
Well, the Sam Mitchell, it seems like
you have to explain that one to me.
It seems like he is playing a very active role in trying to meet with players and sell the vision and be open and meet with them. I'm not sure the specifics, but
Yeah.
is that something that you think the industry has evolved enough to a point now where we can say that openly and be comfortable with it, with coaches meeting with players in season, or do you think we're not there yet?
No, well, I think it is horses for courses. So my assumption would be that that if that's happening, and I'll use Sam as the example that you've brought up, it's because the player wants it to happen. So if a player's interested in coming to the Cats and a prerequisite is that he needs to spend some time with me, I'll make myself available. And if that's reported that we're chasing that player and we've met, I can live with it. I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone, but I don't really care what anyone thinks. It's just maybe it's sort of your job to report sort of how the industry feels about this stuff. But anyone that's really upset about it, it might reflect a bit more on them than it does on us. But again, the key point is, I think we all should be respectful of the fact that the players have more choice than they've ever had, and along with their managers, they're doing a much, much better job of doing their research and getting their due diligence right. So in practice, really, are you going to move to a club without having any visibility on what the coach believes in or how the program's run? I'd be surprised.
Just check closely. Chris, you brought him for a couple of games, played as a sub, and if he gets squeezed out, is he stiff enough to be playing at 4:35 tomorrow afternoon?
Yeah, he is. But hopefully, again, it's a reflection that in good teams, good players get squeezed out and they're stiff. Sometimes it's easy for a coach to have these really specific reasons on why a player should go out. Sometimes it's, you did everything we asked, we've just got some guys coming back in different roles and you're stiff. That's the case here. Ted's done a good job. He's going to be a good player for us.
I reckon you and I probably had this conversation numerous times over the journey, but the success of your VFL team, if you play in September, how important that they continue on, it just gives you that flexibility into September?
Yeah, it's important. We'd prefer it, but there is a balance there. We don't want to get towards the end of the season and say now all of a sudden our priority is on winning those games, when early in the season the priority was more on development. We're still erring on the side of development, but a big part of developing young players is learning how to win. And it's hard to recreate situations at training where you're in a close game and the opposition are trying to stop you. They're valuable experiences. So yes, we'd like them to win, but I don't think we've moved right to that position where if we don't win, it's a disaster. We'd still sort of prioritise individual development over that team success. But clearly, if you're going to play finals, you'd like to have VFL games to lean on.